and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item we have on our agenda is to review the minutes from our prior meeting, and if everyone's had an opportunity to look at those, ask if they're correct, and if so, take a motion to approve them.
I'll make a motion to approve them.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded we approve the minutes from our prior meeting. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. The next item we have is I'm going to ask the board if they have any conflict of interest on any of the agenda items to make it known now so we'll know the prejudice that's there. Anyone have anything to say?
Is this open, or I thought we talked?
Not yet.
That's just these guys. We have to make sure they're not cheating on us, you know?
No.
The next item we have is the review and possible approval for Aspen Cove at Schofield, Phase V11A 7A, located on Parcel 2A-0071, West Schofield, for Mark Nelson. Is Mark here?
So he's joined us remotely.
I think we can see.
On the, let me share my,
Mark, can you hear us okay?
yeah, he can.
Okay, why don't you tell us briefly what you want to do and what your plans are?
Yeah, so we had our phases approved last year.
Hold on a second, Mark.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Technically,
I can barely hear you. I don't know if the planning commission members can hear you.
Todd, maybe I can just say it and you could repeat if they can't hear me. And, you know, basically we had our phases approved last year, and we're just wanting to break those down into smaller phases. So this is a phase of 5 lots, of which was already a phase of 15 lots that was previously approved. We're just a little nervous with the economy and wanting to do fewer lots per phase. So absolutely no changes to the plat at all, other than cutting the lots down into, cutting the plat down into fewer lots.
So basically, last fall, he came in and we did phase 7, and it had 15 lots. That was never recorded. They want to do 5 lots in phase 7. They're going to call it 7A, and they want to do 5 lots. So that's the change, is they've replatted it for 5 lots instead of 15. They'll come in later and do other phases as it continues, but right now it's just 5 lots. That's the only change.
Does that void the approval we did in last August on 7?
Yeah.
Okay.
so someone comfortable in making an alteration to that prior motion to reduce the number of lots?
So yeah, so it'd just be approval of 7A,
7A, yeah.
Aspen Cove 7A.
So how big are the lots?
Same as they were previously. Let me get to the plat. So they are, 4 of them are 1.74 acres, and then the bottom one, 2.9 acres.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any questions. We've been through this property quite a bit. I think we know all the constraints here. I'd be willing to make a motion that we approve Aspen Cove Phase 7A.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the motion, the Schofield Aspen Cove change. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. The next item we have is a public hearing on a change to Carbon County zoning map from Watershed to Pleasant Valley, located on parcel 2A-172 in West Schofield, for John Henrichsen. Is he here? John, before the public hearing gets into motion, would you like to give us a brief description on what your plans are and what your intentions are on that property?
Sure, be happy to.
Sneak up to the microphone
I
here.
don't speak very well anymore. I'm too old and too big to sneak, so thank you. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it. Do you want me to address you or the public, or how do you? I don't want to be rude anywhere. So, a little bit about the property.
Just a minute. Is that microphone on? I don't think anybody behind you can hear you.
Okay.
We got to make sure that's on.
Thank
Need
you.
to.
Thank you.
Okay.
Technology
Maybe I need
isn't
to
our
adjust it
long
up or
suit.
something there. So, a little bit about me. I'm a Springville, Mapleton guy. Grew up in the general area. Been in and out of Scofield, Clear Creek area for my life. Worked at Skyline Mine in my younger days. Used to be a conductor, brakeman. Got into the real estate world. Married way above my level. And been living up in Aspen Cove basically the last 2.5, 3 years. My wife's from the area. She worked for Intermountain Healthcare for years in the upper echelons. We moved to St. Louis, or she did a few years ago. I've been living here basically for the last 2.5, 3 years, taking care of a 90 and 96-year-old mom and dad in St. George, so I'm here a lot. I've looked at this property for years, Fish Creek, the area, beautiful. In a nutshell, we've already bought it. I've got a fairly large family, kids, extended family. We like it up here. We'd like to develop it, but we'd also like to be able to have the ability to rent some overnight cottages or cabins out, not a great big number of them, do a traditional high quality development. You guys would have all the says and all the controls as it ever comes about. There's not a great big number of units we want in there, but we'd like to do something nice in there and have the ability to do, without bragging here, and I'm proud of them, my better half's in the top tiers of the medical world. I've got a son that's an orthopedic surgeon, anesthesia kids, et cetera, et cetera. We'd like to be able to have a place where they could do some sort of consulting, small kind of place where people could come and stay, have a meet and greet kind of place. I'm a hunting and fishing guy. I want a rod and gun club down on the creek where I can hunt, where I can fish, where I can have some people and friends come and stay. I don't know what else to say other than that. I've been up front with, the zoning administrator and the people I've talked to. There's nothing hidden. There's no set number of units I'm looking for, but I just want to do it tasteful and nice and have that ability. If you've got any questions, ask me and I'll be glad to answer as best I can. Looks like we're going to have some sort of show or something.
No, I pushed it and it was,
Okay.
it's sensitive.
Like I said, we're not technology.
Well, I'm not either. I'm glad I don't have to do
No, I
much.
think that was the description we wanted as to what your intent was and what was going on, so
That's
we
it.
may have some questions later.
I have a high school grade average, and that's about it. I got out by my skin of my teeth, and that's who I am. So, if I can
Thank
go-
you, sir. The next item we have on our agenda.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
before we go to the public hearing, could we have maybe Mr. Thorne give us just some basics as far as how many acres this zone change will encompass, how many separate parcels it is, just so the public kind of has an idea. And then maybe he could also state the difference between the Pleasant Valley zone and the Watershed zone. Because I think some of this is important information the public may or may not know, or kind of lays the groundwork for the context of their comments that they may want to give.
Thank you, Bryce. Did you hear that, Todd? You get to give us a rundown.
Yes, so now the screen's ready. So up here on the screen, we show where John's property is. By Upper Fish Creek, it's 415 acres. It's right here that's zoned watershed. There's 37 acres here directly behind, kind of northwest of Schofield Mountain Home that's already currently zoned Pleasant Valley zone. So the portion that would be changed is the area that's in watershed.
And Todd, if you could explain what what the difference is between those two zones, just so the public knows that.
So the Pleasant Valley zone, it says the major purpose of the Pleasant Valley zone is to establish standards for development of the Pleasant Valley, a mixture of existing mobile homes, new factory-built homes, conventional built homes. Log construction characterizes development in this zone. Because of the significance of the reservoir as the major source of culinary, irrigation, and industrial water for Carbon County and a prime water-based recreation area, this zone is directed toward the preservation of surface and groundwater quality and the preservation of open space. In our county general plan, when it comes to the different zones, on page 79 it says, Carbon County enjoys the benefits provided by the mountains and hills that surround many of its communities. These benefits include providing scenic vistas and habitat for wildlife. To preserve these benefits, local governments will identify some areas of the mountains and hillsides where development will not be allowed. Carbon County will also identify areas that provide critical wildlife winter range and critical watershed and protect these areas from further development. While the county finds it important to protect its scenic and wildlife resources, the county will endeavor to protect these resources without unduly interfering with landowners' ability to utilize their lands. To this end, the county will not hesitate to enter cooperative agreements with state and federal land management agencies as well as private landowners. So with that, there are some standards in there to preserve the hillsides and the water that we have in our standards. So in certain zones like Schofield Mountain Home, Aspen Cove, where these mountain developments are allowed, you can't have any buildings on a slope of greater than 30%. Each area in the zone, in a mountain zone, has to have 10,000 square feet. A Schofield, Lakeshore, or Pleasant Valley zone has to have 6,000 square feet. There has to have roads, no roads greater than 15%. If it's a minor street, 12% on a collector street. All of the septic systems would have to be approved by the health department. There'll have to be an agreement between the developer and the county for open space, for any open space that is designated in the area. Same with the water requirements. They'll have to meet all the water requirements for the Division of Water Quality. Those things will have to be met if a zone change is approved and they come in for a conditional use permit to do that. And part of the Pleasant Valley zone, what John was mentioning, we define it as a guest, ranch, and resort. And it's defined as a use incorporating 2 or more guest rooms other than a lodging house, hotel, or motel, including outdoor recreational facilities such as, but not limited to, horseback riding, swimming, tennis courts, shuffleboard courts, barbecue and picnic facilities, dining facilities intended primarily for the use by the guests of the guest ranch. So those is what we define as a guest ranch, and what he's described as wanting to do, I felt that it has fallen into the guest ranch definition within our code. So that's what a Pleasant Valley zone and what is a conditional use, a guest ranch, and a mountain home development. Those two things are a conditional use within that zone.
And so, Toddy, neither of those uses would be allowed in the watershed zone, is that correct?
That's correct. So in the watershed zone, you can have a cabin site on 40 acres. So in theory, if he has 415, he could do like 10 cabin sites, each cabin on 40 acres. They would have to go through the water requirements and septic requirements and everything else like any other cabin.
But he could not have a mountain home development or a
guest ranch in the watershed zone. No, it wouldn't be allowed.
And just to be clear, Todd, even if a zone change were approved or were recommended to be approved by the county commission later, he would still have to come in and get a conditional use permit for any of those uses to be allowed, correct?
Yes.
And also, just so the public knows, tonight, a lot of you will know this already, some of you may not. The Planning Commission simply makes a recommendation to the County Commission as to whether or not the zoning map should be amended for this particular area. So this is not a final decision. The Planning Commission simply takes your comments, makes a recommendation to the County Commission, who will make the final decision on this. And I just want to, if I can just reiterate just briefly, a decision, a zoning decision, a zoning change is a legislative decision. The Utah Supreme Court and the Utah Court of Appeals have had several rulings where they've said a board's decision to approve or to deny a zone change must meet what's called the reasonably debatable standard. So if the decision that the basis for your recommendation, it must be reasonably debatable that your decision is in the interest of the general welfare of the county and its citizens. It's not the higher standard that would be applied for a conditional use permit, where there must be substantial evidence brought forth. This is simply a reasonably debatable standard, and there's a large amount of deference granted to the legislative body, meaning the county commission, that finally makes the decision. So basically, if you find evidence that's reasonably debatable in furtherance of one decision or another, you are within your discretion to, as a body, make that decision or that recommendation tonight. So I just wanted everybody to kind of be aware of what the legal standard is as we discuss this.
And one other comment, we got a lot of emails saying that they weren't notified of the zone change. And the reason for that, to give a quick explanation, is this...
Not that they weren't notified of the change, but of the public hearing itself,
of the public hearing.
Right?
So the area behind Scofield Mountain Home is already zoned Pleasant Valley zone. So the state code requires properties that are adjacent to or partially within or entirely within an area of a zone change to be notified. So property owners who are not where the zone change is going to happen, which is on the watershed, did not receive a notice. So anyone whose property is in watershed and adjacent to the proposed zone change received a letter based on their mailing address for their tax notice. So that's what we go off of, is their tax notices, and we mailed those out to notify those people. So if they're not in the watershed, then they didn't get, and adjacent to the property being zone changed, they didn't receive a letter, because this area is already Pleasant Valley zone, so that is not being changed. This is going to stay the same.
Thank you, Todd. And I neglected to mention, we've got two commissioners with us tonight because they want to hear what's going on so they can help make their decision later down the trail here. So thank you for being here, commissioners. The next item we have on our agenda is the public hearing. And when we do the public hearing, when you come up to the microphone here in the center, if you'd give your name, and there's a little note on there, I think, that tells you that. And we'll limit it to 3 minutes per person. So somebody start and give us 3 minutes worth.
We need to make a motion.
Oh,
Yeah, motion.
motion to go into the public hearing.
Motion that we open the public hearing at 16:50.
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Yep.
Okay, I'm Jimmy Pietchko, and we're right in the middle of this development. So our property has been owned by our family for generations. We are the only property holder that supports a dwelling in this area. This dwelling has been there since 1963 and is maintained suitable to the rural aspect of the countryside. Our family has strong ties to this property. We treasured its rugged beauty, clear water, and consider it an oasis that is rapidly dwindling in availability throughout Utah. Our main areas of concern with the proposed changes in the zoning consist of road accessibility, water availability, and maintaining the existing rural aspects of the inner of our property. First, our property is completely landlocked by the property owner. There is only one private road in which we are able to access our property. This road is owned by the application proposing the zoning change. We are concerned that change in the zoning would impact ingress and egress routes, potentially create unattainable conditions should the access areas be changed with further development in the area. Our property is surrounded by steep slopes which would potentially create significant alteration of our property, which is currently an access point. We object to creating a thoroughfare that would intersect our property as it may lie directly in the path of future proposed roadway. We desire protection to ensure that no hardship would be created by limiting access to the property. Road egress to future development properties surrounding our property should maintain a buffer to sustain our privacy. Secondly, we are concerned that with the zoning change, future development will reduce or eliminate our water resources. This area has already been depleted with previous development in the area, significantly reduced the available water access on our property. This issue will continue to accelerate with additional development in the area. We desire protection to ensure that our water rights will not be impacted. Water will be limited source with competing demands, and changing the zoning will allow development in this area to negatively impact our property. Thirdly, the future development of the parcel could significantly alter private, royal, and secluded nature inherited on our property, thus destroying the ambient nature and serenity of the area. We do not want to interfere with the rights of another property owner to develop their property so long as those rights do not impact the rights to maintain an environment that has existed for decades. We therefore desire a buffer to be established between future development and a continuous property. Lastly, we do not object to the rezoning per se, only the methods in which the rezoning may impact our property and the surrounding area. We have not been provided concept plan for the development, nor do we have contact information of the property owners or developers to open a dialogue for discussion in all this rezoning. We will impact immensely. We respectfully request an information. Finally, we support the Commissioner's efforts to ensure that all interested property holders are benefited and improvements proposed by adjacent landowners. Please take special care for maintaining the integrity of the area and preserving it for the enjoyment of future generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Don't be bashful. We're waiting for somebody else here. Neil?
How are you? Thank you for the opportunity to come and share some thoughts on this.
Could we get your name,
Wayne
please?
Franson, property owner. Have a company called Duvel's, which is adjoining on the map there to the instant property, but the zoning presently is PV. And that's what I was told, the reason I wasn't notified about the public hearing. I take some exception to that. There are a number of reasons for notifying, And the state code says that each property owner whose land is directly affected by the land use ordinance change should be notified of the public hearing. That's just one of the criteria. And I think that's what's generated some of the concern here, is the lack of notification of the public hearing and knowing what was going to be proposed. I have a number of questions. They may not all be able to be answered here, but one question I have is you referred to the mountain home development. Is that an overlay to the PV zone? I don't know if somebody can answer that off the...
And I don't think we're here to answer the questions.
Okay.
We're here to listen to the questions and then make a judgment based upon the input that we get. So this isn't a question answer.
Okay, I was told it would be if we had time, but I understand that time is of the essence. Because in looking at some of the criteria that's outlined in the letter that you showed, it's different than the PV standards. So that's the reason I asked my question. If it was an overlay zone, I can understand why some of the differences, but I'm just trying to understand that better. There are many issues. I think one of my main concerns is, as has been expressed by the Fiechicos, I'm not opposed to the development, but I am concerned that it be done correctly. And we rely upon the county to make sure that that happens, that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, so to speak. We're particularly concerned, I am, about our water quality. I also have a home in the adjoining subdivision, which again was not notified of the public hearing, and there'll be others who can talk to that. But water is gold up there, and we want to make sure that ours is not adversely impacted by whatever development does happen. The Fish Creek is a pristine stream, and we would not want cabins close to that would have an adverse impact on that stream and its fishing and emptying into the reservoir. So there's just a lot of concerns that I have and questions, and I can address those later with the Planning Commission too, to try to get answers to some of those questions that I do have. We've had longtime family interests at Schofield for over 60, 70 years, and we've enjoyed the area as a place to recreate and fish and hunt, and I don't want to deny others that same opportunity if it's done appropriately. I don't know how much attention has been given to the concept plan that I just got a copy of yesterday. I'd be interested in knowing if that's been reviewed and acceptable to the county as a concept plan, or if there are issues with that are out of sorts with ordinances and so forth that the county has. I would like to get on a list, if that's possible, of any future public hearings or public meetings that have to do with this particular development, to be aware of them and with the opportunity to come here and hear what further has to be presented as time passes on it. So thank you for your time.
Can I make just one comment? I don't think there's anything wrong with asking questions kind of in the just asking questions, saying these are the questions that I have, as long as everybody understands it's not going to be that you're not going to be expected to be providing. So I think it's
Write down every question that's asked, and
yeah,
I can answer those, but not in the public hearing.
Okay, just a minute, okay? I think it's okay if you list the questions you have, as long as there's not an expectation that they're going to be answered today. In other words, if you say these are the questions we have that we don't have answered and that we think you ought to also have, I think it's fine to present those questions. And so I think, because that gets everybody thinking, it's just, I think everybody should understand it's not to be a question answer session, and I think that's what you were getting at, Scott. But simply rhetorically asking the questions, I think, is fine.
Okay. My time has probably expired, so I'll put a list of questions together for the planning and zoning here and look for answers from them.
Wayne,
Yes.
and you've probably worked with the planning department before, and they're more than willing to sit down with you and have those conversations and
Okay,
help ease our minds.
very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet.
Gentlemen, thanks for having us. My name is Brandon Pack. My brother and I own some property adjacent to the one in question here in the Watershed area. Some of the concerns we have, particularly having been in this area for multiple decades now, is concerns around infrastructure, concerns around parking, the water that's already been shared. That road is really small. It's always crowded. It's not always plowed. We have a lot of people already parking in places they shouldn't be and disrupting a lot of that land as is. And so already concerns about a lot of this. So this is the first I've heard of the ranch type concept and hotel, ideas. So we weren't notified. I believe there may have been an attempt, but as an adjacent landowner of the Watershed area, we did not receive any notification. So have some concerns about that as well. I think what my biggest concern is how much I love Schofield in that area. This Watershed area is an escape from the rest of the world, and I love being in that area and seeing the outdoors and the environment, and I don't want to take that away from anyone else, but I also don't want to take that away entirely. So I would just like to express that, for my kids and generations to come, to still give them a place that is preserved and pristine, and not high trafficked, tourist attraction. I've seen all the fishermen and everyone loving that area and the hunting. I would really hate to see that area turn into a giant tourist attraction that's bringing in people from all over the world, short-term rentals that don't care about the land, don't care about how they're treating the area around them, and that would be one of my biggest concerns that I would hope would be taken into consideration. So, as an adjacent property owner, I do have a vested interest, and like I said, was concerned about not being notified. I think there is sufficient land. I'd love the landowners to be able to put some cabins there and enjoy it as well. But where I would be concerned is changing all of that area, rezoning, in order to, give free reign to bring in a huge tourist attraction, hotels, even consulting, and turn that beautiful mountain area into a business and into a high traffic commerce area. I think in today's world, we have too little areas like this left. And so I would just please hope that I could count on the county to help protect that for my kids and generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
I figure it's appropriate to go after my brother, Darren Pack, landowner adjacent to the property as proposed. I haven't met John until today, so it was nice to meet you, but I have heard of him through the dealings with my father-in-law. When he purchased this land, one of the reasons you haven't heard from us before this while we owned it is because we believe it should be a watershed. I believe we have a right and a duty to protect this water. I enjoy Lake Powell. Just this is the same as other, but as you know, it's draining, and there's less and less of resources like this today, and water is becoming a more scarce resource. If we don't take the actions today to protect our water for our future, we're doing ourselves a disservice. There are plenty of places to build. As a matter of fact, with the map above, you all can see he has plenty of places to build on his current property. When my father-in-law sold this to him, that's exactly what he was going to do. I'm going to build a few cabins for my family, and we're going to enjoy the property. I propose that be the same vision today as it was when he bought the property, as to protect it for the rest of us. I do want to ask some rhetorical questions, so I thank you for that, because I think there's a lot of unanswered questions. What effect will this zone have on my property? Being adjacent to him and below him, and us utilizing that resource water, and the lake being half drained at this point, how does that affect all of that? Has there been an environmental impact result done on this, and what are the results of that? How will it affect our specific well and our specific spring to Mountain Home subdivision? I think we need and deserve answers to that. What will the impact of the increased traffic and flow to the area? As Brandon mentioned, some people get around rules already in our cabins, and they end up Airbnb-ing it. I've never seen such disastrous people enter the area than those people. They're the ones destroying the roads and not taking care of the community versus the landowner. So I do believe if you develop on the current property you can, that you'll take care of it and help preserve it for our family and generations to come. A few outstanding questions. What would the impact being on parking? We already can't park. There's too many people bringing up friends. How will hunting on the land impact with more people being close to that? Is that going to be allowed, and how could that impact us? And then, of course, property taxes and rising. Are we going to eventually be priced out? And does this just become a resort community that, that is totally different vision than everybody currently has on it today? And obviously, we are not aware of any details on this, such as lot sizes, how many. Obviously, if he's already got some land he can build a few cabins on, I would appreciate that and appreciate not touching the watershed. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to hand this out. I'm going to read it. I want to make sure you guys have copies. I think I have just enough.
Okay, yeah, I'm Neil Breinhold. The letter that I just passed out here represents my thoughts and concerns. I was really happy and surprised that we were able to get this. It's been written by somebody who is representing owners that are adjacent to the proposed zone change. I'm just going to read it from number 1 on there. The zoning change would potentially allow residential development with narrower setbacks and a greater density by right, giving the property owners the ability to process development applications for higher density developments with greater ease and without WS, watershed appropriate, thorough county review. This is exactly the result that the present watershed zoning classification is designed to avoid. The underlying factors prompting long-standing WS zoning, geography, topography, water sensibility in the area have not changed. Therefore, the heightened level of development scrutiny commensurate with the WS zone should not change. Giving the property owner a zoning classification of PV bestows commensurate property development rights. Development applications would not then be reviewed with appropriate scrutiny without the threat of the property owner claims of unlawful taking. There is no reason for the county to reduce its oversight rights at this time. We note that the number 49 single-family dwellings, convention, construction, and factory built is not permitted in the WS zones, but it is permitted in the PV zone. Further, sewage fields in WS must be approved by applicable authority. There is no such review for sewage fields noted in the PV zoning ordinance. While we may not object to development at the site, we do object to the zoning reclassification, which provides an end run around WS zoning's protective scrutiny on behalf of the public and the environment. If the county and the property owners are confident that that proposed development will not impact the environment in any way, the WS zoning is designed to prevent, then the property owner can have evidence that there are no public damage to the approval process for development within the WS zone. Property owners and the county have experienced responsible use practices around the reservoir for decades to preserve the environment from adverse impacts of human intrusion. This zoning reclassification for the substantially sized parcel intended for dense development is a 180-degree policy turn. The residential development of the type rumored to be proposed for this site, with the requisite septic sewer systems, may threaten surface and underground water sources, some of which are natural springs subject to protective laws and regulations. This is a condition to the development. As a condition to the development and the zoning change, potentially negative impacts water serving human populations, wildlife, flora, fauna should be studied by the property owner as part of the development proposal. The area is part of migratory patterns for elk and the natural habitat of beavers and other wildlife. As a condition to the development and any zoning change, potential negative impacts to the wildlife should be studied by the property owner as part of the development proposal. Developer reports such as those prepared to address concerns in all 3 and 4 specifically assume that the nature and density of the development that may be proposed by the property owner, giving the county and the public the information necessary to evaluate the impacts of the development. Zoning changes which will not later be required, similarly with the intensity of the review that are currently in WS, are premature and uninformed. It is a disservice to the public to downzone property to allow for proposed use or potential proposed use that would not be allowed under the current zoning without requisite petition, diligence, and a public hearing. I contacted the Planning Department to ask for those copies of any studies, reports, or investigations prepared by the property owners or the county, either in support of or informing the instant proposal, and was informed that there are no such studies reported or investigations. We see no justifiable reason for the county to support this zoning reclassification, effectively vacating a substantial measure of its oversight functions and allowing development without thorough study of environmental impacts. While we appreciate that Carbon County may be motivated to generate higher property tax revenues from residential uses, the ecology sensitivity of the area and concerns for the sustainability of water and clean water in Schofield Watershed far outweigh unnecessary abandonment of WS classifications. I didn't mention that I live minutes from this. I only know one person that was actually notified, and it was mostly we had no answers to anything. But I agree with what this letter says and would like it entered as part of the minutes today. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What lots does this property owner own?
I don't know that. I don't know that. In fact, this isn't this is just somebody who was asked to produce this statement by those property owners. So I'm sure you could contact them.
Who asked to have this property investigated by this individual?
I don't know that. Thank you.
My name is Greg, Greg Jensen, and Scofield's like my second home, I can say. A little bit of a timeline. Last Thursday, I was notified by a property owner that was notified of the potential for a zoning change. I'm a board member of the Schofield Mountain Home subdivision, and I was notified on Thursday of the zoning change proposal, and Saturday we presented some of that the information that we knew to the HOA members, and I am here on behalf of them and was nominated as president of the HOA that day. I feel like I'm drinking a little bit from the fire hose and trying to learn everything that I can. I learned, of course, that we weren't required to be notified of the zoning change since we don't, the property north of us is already PV. The subdivision has a lot of history and about 50, 55 years old. The people that own property in this subdivision care about it deeply, and I think ultimately we'd just like to see all the T's crossed and the I's dotted, and entrust the board and the commissioners to do so. And ultimately, I have a request that we be notified of any progression of the zoning change along with the preliminary map and any further development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Tatton, and commission members, my name is Michael Jensen. My wife, Camille, and I, and she's in the audience with us, are owners of the property due west of Henrichsen's property. We're upstream. By the way, it just occurred to me, I'm the only one with a tie on.
It isn't church, by the way.
Okay. I feel better. Maybe you feel better too. We're upstream. Upper Fish Creek, Henrichsen's, Jensen's, the Forest Service. That's it. This critical watershed. We're lifelong residents of Carbon County. Camille and I are. We happen to be lifelong taxpayers too, at least since we became adults. I've tried to put myself in your shoes as commission members. It seems to me that you're guardians of the gate. Your recommendation is only a recommendation to the county commissioners, but it's a significant recommendation. County officials need to be, I'm sure they are, delighted that the tax base is increasing with development, residential, cabin development, stuff like that. But by the same token, we got to get it right. Otherwise, the barn door is open and you can't come back and redo it again. So your recommendation becomes very significant. Again, Upper Fish Creek, Henrichsen's, Jensen's, Forest Service. I don't know of a more critical watershed than Upper Fish Creek and Lower Fish Creek. We've got one reservoir. Well, we actually have two reservoirs, don't we, here in Carbon County? Schofield Reservoir and Grassy Creek on the east end. But it's the only watershed other than Gordon Creek coming here into the valley. We've got to get it right. The recommendations of the Planning Department to the Commission, you have three different alternatives. You can just recommend to the County Commission that this be approved. You can deny it, guardian of the gate, or you can table the decision for further review. We've heard tonight a number of people who have been caught short. This property, the Henrichsens just purchased it in January of this year. 40 acres, WS watershed, 2 acres PV zone. That's a big, big difference. Camille, and my position is, step back, take a further look at this as a planning commission. Take your time on it, rather than just recommend it for approval to the county commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Being a little flippant, but accused the last speaker with his tie of being at church. And it's as quiet as a church in here right now. Does anyone else have a comment they'd like to make? Hearing none, I would take a motion to go out of public hearing.
Make a motion to go out of public hearing.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded that we leave the public hearing. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you. Motion carries. Next item we have on our agenda is the review and recommendation to County Commission on a change to the Carbon County zoning map from Watershed, WS, to Pleasant Valley, PV, located on Parcel 2A-172 at West Scofield for John Henrichsen. Talk to me, guys. What do we want to do?
Mr. Chairman, I tend to agree. Mr. Henrichsen's description of what he wants to do with the property compared to the concept plan that was created differ quite greatly. I hear some things about family property, and then what I see here is the intent to build a commercial resort facility, and that does not seem consistent right now with what's going on up there. So I think that it's very much justified to take an additional look at this. So I'd personally like to make a motion that we table this development or the zone change such that we can get some details on the intent of the facility, the occupancy of the buildings, just the sheer volume of it. County roadways are impacted. I have a lot of the same questions that the public does, so that is my recommendation.
I second the motion.
I'd second that too, with the comment that, yeah, there's a very big environmental issues here.
One comment, so if we table it, the applicant has to consent to the tabling of it. So here's the concept plan that he submitted. Anyways, so if the applicant consents to the tabling, then that's fine, but that's up to Mr. Henrichsen.
Can I say?
Yeah.
Let's have you come to the microphone.
This concept plan was drawn.
Wait. Microphone.
Sorry. This concept plan was drawn in a response to saying that's what we needed to do in order to proceed to this point. Those are locations that can be pads. It's not that that's what it's going to be. That's locations that meet your code under the 30% slope in certain areas. There's no fixed number. What that represents is building envelopes that could be. I'm not saying that there's 49 units in there. We'd be glad to do a development agreement, address the concerns that are in here. They're all legitimate, but there's no fixed number to that. That's the areas that would be considered as a building envelope or a pad. And it's not 49 units, it's significantly less, way less than that we could do in a development agreement and answer your questions.
So
that was in response to what I was asked to do. So that's what that is.
Typically, we can't bind an applicant for a zone change to any particular. You could say that you promise this is what you're going to do, but legally you're not bound to abide by what you present for the purposes of a zone change. You can say, this is my concept, I promise I'll do this, but he's not required to. If he does get a zone change approval, he could always bring a different plan forward for his conditional use permit. So we wouldn't do a development agreement at this point. I don't think I don't know that we have the authority to do that where, in conjunction with a zone change. I think the real question, Mr. Henrichsen, is whether you would agree to bump this out a little bit for everybody to have some more time
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
I don't have anything to hide. It's just the steps
Sure.
that we need to take to get to this point.
And I think if you're willing to pass it out before bump it out one more time before they make a formal recommendation, then
Most certainly.
that would give everybody time to talk and visit and approach you with questions and so forth.
Yeah, and that's fine. And Danny, I don't have anything to hide. I welcome that. So
Okay.
there's nothing worse than the rumor mill. So
I hear.
And for your information, when Mr. Henrichsen came and met with me, I told him, I says, put together some type of a concept plan so we understand what you want to do, what you potentially envision for the property. So we went through, as I said earlier, the guest ranch, the mountain home development. One thing that was brought up is the mountain home development and overlay zone. It's not, that's what Schofield Mountain Home is. It's a planned mountain unit development that's a conditional use in that zone, and there's a couple other zones in the county. So there are those design criterias for a planned mountain home development. Those are criterias for a, quote, guest ranch that would allow, cabins to be rented overnight. There wouldn't be allowed to be hotels. They'd have to be individual buildings. Many of them mentioned that there are already cabins being Airbnb'd. So I asked him, give me a concept plan so we know what we're doing. We've had issues in the past that they come in for zone change and we have no information until the day of the meeting. So he submitted this to me. I put it in the staff report for you guys, so we had at least a general idea of what he potentially wants to do. So this all came together at my request, saying I want everything on the table of what you may want to do. And like Christian said, we can't bind him by saying you're only allowed X number, but this gives us something to move forward. This is just a general idea. The zone change like we've gone through before. This gives us something to move forward with. All the other things would have to come back for approval and all those other requirements. So, but that's where this particular thing that you're seeing came from, is at my request.
And we got his agreement, so the motion still stands.
Yep. Did you have something, Kurt?
Yeah, hey, I'd just like to see if we could set up like a field trip. I'd like to go up and look at where the property is and kind of how it ties into everything.
I'd love to do it. I've brought that up with some, and I'd love to do it.
Okay, yeah, I would like to do that if we can.
Yep.
So we've got a motion out there with a second to it. Is that a motion to amend it to include that? Are you making a motion, Kurt, to amend that to include a field trip as part of the motion to continue it? To continue the hearing?
Yeah, I'd like to, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thanks, sir.
So tell me what we're doing, so I know in layman's terms. We're coming back again to talk after we do a field trip and that kind of stuff.
So it'll be tabled, and now the question is, when do you want it back on the agenda? Do you want it back in July, August? What month do you want this item brought back for?
It would be my opinion that we give ourselves a few days, maybe weeks, to possibly do the field trip and then set the meeting when we feel more comfortable with.
You tell me, you get the powers to be, so you guys tell me.
So yeah, July is, our meeting would be.
As long as it's not the 21st of July, I'm good.
Would be the 5th of July. So that puts us in the next couple weeks getting up there to do the field trip in time for our July meeting. So
I think that's with the holiday weekend. I'd recommend that we look at the August meeting if that's acceptable.
Well, I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I believe that field trip would also have to be, would be a public meeting.
Yep.
That we'd have to give public notice of.
Yep.
52.4.201 says, well, it's somewhere in here. I'm pretty certain that if we're convening as a quorum,
Yep.
then it's a public meeting that we'll have to give notice is taking place. So just everybody keep that in mind.
Yep, we'll have to give at least 24-hour notice when we do it and have a location, and so we'll have to notify where we'll be meeting at and post that on our public meeting notice website, or the state's public meeting notice website. And that's anyone who wants more information. If you go to PM, and so Peter, Mary, what's the N for? November.utah.gov, and subscribe to Carbon County Planning Commission, you'll be emailed every agenda that comes up. So I know a couple of requests we forward it. We sometimes have a hard time getting everyone's email. So if you subscribe to the public meeting notice website, Carbon County Planning Commission, you'll be notified of all agenda items coming up, including the potential field trip that we'll work out.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Todd, for that information. You have some updates on previous.
Yeah. And also the concept.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I'll get to you.
You have your updates.
So as far as my updates, just for your information, Graphite Solar is producing power now. They will be connecting and sending it to the grid June 23rd, but they're going through and they're actually producing the power. So that's essentially done. They've just got a few minor things going on. I'm not aware of any new subdivision requests that will be coming in for July, but that'll change. Well, I'm sure we'll get something. But other than that, I don't have any other updates. If you guys have any questions or... And thanks everyone for coming and providing your comments. You could always email me and I can respond to those. You can call and we can get any of those questions answered that you have. I took all those notes and we'll get those all to the county commission and answered back when we meet again.
Excellent. Would accept a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded we adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want an extra copy?
No.
Good comments.
I looked at where the thing is from, and then I looked at the property map, and I didn't see his name anywhere on the ownership.
It's easy to hire outsiders who can say nice things or bad
Well,
things.
I'm looking at this.
Yeah.
I don't need the Californian.
I'm glad that you picked up on that.
Everybody else here was a property owner. And to have a third party outside the state tell us that we're doing this all wrong, and he doesn't own the property here. Boy, that guy just don't have to say how much he pays.
Yeah. Yes, we'll send out.
We're just making recommendations now. C, D, E, and F.
Yeah. You need a signature, girl.
Might help well.
So, question. Last time I could get a signature, is it Gary that needs to sign since you weren't here?
Yeah.
Is that how it works? Got the two. Last page.
Put the dime on you.